A U.S. citizen is on Hong Kong's wanted list for promoting Hong Kong's democracy and freedom. It's the first case since the introduction of the national security law. Floods in the Yangtze River basin area are decreasing, but a typhoon threatened even more heavy rain, and the Yellow River's water level is surging further. Suspicions have been rising on whether the Chinese Communist Party is preparing for a war. An article online aroused yet more suspicion. People from the U.S. and some other countries received mysterious seeds from China. Now, part of the mystery has been solved, but the warning is not over. And Apple removed 30,000 apps from its App Store in China. And a Chinese company has filed a lawsuit against Apple, targeting many of its products in China. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. Hong Kong police are looking to arrest 6 pro-democracy activists abroad, one of them a U.S. citizen. It's for violations of the new national security law by promoting Hong Kong's independence in the U.S. NTD's Juliet Song reports.
A U.S. citizen woke up to the news that he's a fugitive wanted by Beijing. Posting on Twitter, Samuel Chu said his alleged crimes include colluding with foreign powers under China's national security law. Chu has been a U.S. citizen for over 25 years. He runs an advocacy group in D.C. that promotes Hong Kong's democracy and freedom. He tweeted that he's now targeted for lobbying his own government. Beijing imposed a sweeping law on Hong Kong in late June. It criminalizes secession and colluding with foreign forces with up to life in prison. The law also states that foreigners outside of China are subject to charges as well. Chu tweeted, "If I am targeted, any American or any citizen of any nation who speaks out for Hong Kong can and will be too." He's not the only one on Beijing's wanted list. Hong Kong police are seeking to arrest 6 pro-democracy activists now in exile overseas. Most of them are now in the UK, one granted asylum in Germany. This marks the first time that authorities are using the law to go after activists outside of Hong Kong. Simon Cheng is one of them. He said he didn't receive any formal notice from Beijing. A friend told him after reading the news.
I was quite shocked, but I was also confused. What was my alleged crime? It says that I incited secession. I just thought it's odd because it's an inaccurate use of the term.
Cheng used to work for the British consulate in Hong Kong. In 2019, he disappeared on a business trip to China, taken into Chinese custody. He was released after 2 weeks. Cheng said during detention, Chinese secret police tortured him, pressing him to admit that the UK government has been funding the pro-democracy protesters in Hong Kong. He was granted asylum in the UK last month. To protect his family from being harassed by the police, Cheng cut ties with them this January. He said the decision wasn't easy.
At first, I didn't want to sever the relationship with my family, but to maintain a connection. But I reached the point where I feared that my family members, especially those in the mainland, could be harassed by police. For their safety, I stopped all contact with them.
Another wanted activist, Nathan Law, also announced that he will sever his relationship with his family after the warrant for his arrest came out. Cheng said he feels connected with others on the wanted list. He says he respects Law's decision and hopes they will unite to fight for Hong Kong's freedom from abroad. Sarah Liang and Juliet Song, NTD News.
Now we turn to Hong Kong. Beijing's national security law and the postponement of Hong Kong's Legislative Council election are causing great controversy in the city. But now another issue is adding fuel to the flame. The Chinese Communist regime sent a so-called support team to Hong Kong to help fight the virus epidemic there. Among the team's tasks, carrying out mass virus testing for Hong Kong citizens. 7 of them arrived in Hong Kong on Sunday and will stay there for 1 month. A temporary laboratory will be set up on Monday. Another team that's assisting Hong Kong built a makeshift hospital. It's expected to open within the next few days. The 6-member team of experts will stay in Hong Kong for half a year. For more than 10 days in a row, the number of newly confirmed cases in Hong Kong has exceeded 100. The 60-person support team from mainland China has been organized as a result. In an interview with Chinese state-run media, a key member of the support team and the director of a makeshift hospital in Wuhan explained the team will provide professional service and guidance in Hong Kong. He added that it will, at the same time, bring over the deep concern that the central government and all of mainland China's citizens toward the people of Hong Kong. But Hong Kongers seem to have other concerns. Some are questioning whether Hong Kongers' DNA will be collected and sent to China. That's after reports that the Communist Party did just that in the Xinjiang region, the home of the Uyghur ethnic group. Hong Kong's government denied the claim over the weekend, but the refute appears not to have done much to calm suspicions. Pro-democracy groups are also voicing another complaint. Hong Kong's government stated that for the first time it has asked Beijing for help on Saturday. But 1 week ago, China's National Health Commission had already held a video conference for the support team and Hong Kong regarding the support action. Hong Kong's democratic groups criticized the whole operation for a lack of transparency. In addition, the issue is likely being used by the party as a propaganda tool. Now to the virus situation in Dalian. Dalian, a northeastern Chinese city, is among the hardest hit areas amid the new wave of CCP virus. The city has continuously seen new confirmed cases. According to Dalian authorities, Kaiyang Seafood Company has reported a relatively high amount of those cases. The company, like many others in the Dalian Bay Area, have all been closed. Within around the last 2 weeks, Kaiyang Seafood has accumulated 36 cases. That accounts for nearly half of the city's total cases. At present, there are still 32 asymptomatic patients in Dalian, and more than half are employed by the company. Due to the Communist Party's virus cover-up, Dalian's cases may be higher than what's been officially announced. Chinese authorities say the city's outbreak has no connection with other Chinese cities. They claim it originated from abroad via the seafood company's dealings. They've also made similar comments regarding Beijing's second wave, which began in June. The capital city's crackdown targeted imported salmon, deemed to be the cause. But salmon producers from other countries have not found any virus in their operations. It's also commonly thought to be rare for aquatic animals and products to become infected with the CCP virus. That's because the virus attacks the lungs, but fish do not have lungs. Now we take a look at the Yellow River Basin area. Bands of heavy rainfall have moved northward from the area surrounding the Yangtze River. That's as rainfall in the upper reaches of the Yellow River has already lasted for several days. In June and July, the Yellow River had its first and second waves of flooding this year. A third one may be still on its way. According to Chinese media, the floodgates of the Yellow River's reservoirs were open to release floodwaters. The water flow at Hukou Waterfall along the Yellow River has exceeded 2,700 cubic meters per second. On Saturday, heavy rain hit an area near Baoding City in Hebei Province. A video shows that the water level there has surged. The person who posted this video described how torrents even washed away local livestock. The Yangtze River Basin is still recovering from unusual flooding, but a typhoon heading towards vulnerable eastern coastal areas threatened even more heavy rain. Typhoon Hagupit, with wind gusts of up to nearly 60 miles per hour at its center, was moving northwest at 16 miles per hour. It was expected to land Monday night local time between Zhejiang and Fujian provinces. Shanghai was also expected to be hit. As a result, China's Meteorological Administration initiated a Level 3 emergency response, a yellow warning for typhoons. Fishing boats were recalled to port, while ferry services in some train lines have been suspended. Now we turn to a curious article that has emerged from a Chinese web company. NetEase, one of China's leading internet tech companies, published an article about recruiting soldiers on Sunday. It's titled "The Law of Military Service, National Wartime Military Mobilization." It says according to wartime demands, China's State Council and Central Military Commission may decide to draft male citizens between the ages of 36 and 45 for active service. The article also states that refusal to serve, if selected, would constitute a criminal offense and would be punishable by up to 2 years in prison. Netizens have since expressed their dissatisfaction online. Some ask whether the CCP plans to turn all Chinese citizens into soldiers and use them to single-handedly challenge the rest of the world. Some netizens also question the use of manpower in the era of technological warfare. Now to the U.S. President Trump changes track. He says the popular video sharing app TikTok will not be banned from the U.S. as long as it's bought by an American company.
And here's the deal. I don't mind if, whether it's Microsoft or somebody else, a big company, a secure company, very American company, buy it.
The president said TikTok had 45 days, or until September 15th, to find an American buyer. Trump originally wanted to ban TikTok, saying it poses a threat to national security. The American-owned Microsoft says it's interested in buying 30% of the Chinese company. Trump said he approved the possible deal, but that the Treasury Department should also receive a payment as part of it.
Apple has removed about 30,000 apps, mostly games, from its App Store in China. It showcases China's tightening control on the gaming industry. It's expected to affect small and mid-sized developers the most.
Research firm Qimai says Apple took down about 30,000 apps from its Chinese App Store. Nearly 90% of them were games. App in China's marketing manager says this will affect small and mid-sized developers the most. But because of the difficulty of getting a license in China, it's also devastating to the whole iOS game industry in China. Apple's move highlights the Chinese regime's tightening control on its gaming industry. Regulators now have a stricter and slower process to review and grant licenses for apps. In 2018, authorities halted approval for 9 months to remove apps with content deemed inappropriate. App makers have been skirting the law by publishing the games first while waiting for approval. This has allowed unlicensed games to thrive on Apple's iPhone platform. Apple's App Store made over $60 billion last year. About 1/5 of that was from the Chinese market.
A company in Shanghai has filed a lawsuit against Apple. It claims it was the innovator of voice assistant technology similar to Siri. The company is telling Apple to stop producing, selling, and using Siri products, which includes almost all of Apple's devices.
A Chinese intelligence company has filed a patent infringement lawsuit against Apple. If successful, it could prevent Apple from selling many of its products in China, its second most important market. The Shanghai Zhijin Intelligent Network Technology Company argued that Apple's voice recognition technology, Siri, infringes on a patent it applied for in 2004 and was granted in 2009. Shanghai Zhijin is calling for $1.4 billion in damages. The lawsuit is the latest in a conflict that's gone on for nearly a decade. Shanghai Zhijin first sued Apple for patent infringement in 2012 over its voice recognition technology. Last month, China's Supreme People's Court ruled that the patent was valid. But a former Chinese judge told the Wall Street Journal that the current court could still find the underlying technology different enough to rule in Apple's favor.
A new report has found the extensive collaboration between U.S. academia and Chinese researchers with ties to the Chinese military are a threat to national security. The report was published by the Hoover Institute at Stanford University. It found that on over 250 research papers, U.S. researchers collaborated with their counterparts from 7 Chinese universities. But all 7 have ties to China's military, known as the People's Liberation Army, or PLA. A central Chinese regime ministry has overseen the 7 universities since 2008 and refers to them as the 7 Sons of National Defense. All 7 universities stipulate that their core mission is to support China's military defense research. But only 4 are on the U.S. Entity Export Control List. The report found instances where Chinese researchers working with the U.S. allegedly try to conceal their ties to the defense institutions. It added that some of them even appear to have worked on classified weapons programs. The report also found some Chinese researchers used innocent-sounding terms in an apparent effort to hide their ties to the Chinese military. For example, instead of using the Chinese term National Defense Key Laboratory, they would use State Key Laboratory to describe their affiliations. In other instances, some Chinese co-authors didn't list any curriculum vitae on their faculty web pages. The report stated such collaborations pose a threat to national security. That's because they give the PLA-linked institutions an opportunity to harvest U.S. science and technology research at its source and divert it to the People's Republic of China defense research and weapons program development. Such findings would then boost the Chinese regime's military prowess, which is not in line with U.S. national interests. The report reviewed papers published between January 2013 and March 2019, retrieved from a Chinese state-backed database. The research papers covered a number of topics, from new energy technologies to aeronautical engineering. This follows earlier work by Australian think tank Australian Strategic Policy Institute. In a 2018 report, the ASPI found that more than 2,500 Chinese military scientists and engineers have traveled abroad to study since 2007, often by masking their military ties. The new report comes as the Trump administration ramps up its efforts to counter the Chinese state-sanctioned theft of American research. The U.S. just recently ordered the closure of the Chinese consulate in Houston after accusing it of being a center for espionage. In May, President Trump issued an executive order barring entry to Chinese graduate or higher students from organizations connected to the regime's civil-military fusion complex. Getting students into those groups stands as one of the CCP's national strategies to develop the PLA into a world-class military by 2049. Hoover analysts warn the regime will likely try to circumvent the ban by shifting collaboration online or overseas, or by using collectors from entities that aren't restricted by the order. The Hoover report recommended that U.S. research institutions increase investigations into foreign research collaborations. It also recommends they create a set of ethical standards to ensure partnerships don't aid authoritarian regimes, military, or their ability to repress people. The Hoover report mentions 7 Chinese universities, but the Mars mission of China shows there are actually even more Chinese universities involved in aerospace research. China's first Mars mission probe carried out its first orbital correction on Sunday. According to Chinese state-run media, at least 7 Chinese universities are involved in the project. None of them are listed by the Hoover report. These universities are spread across China. Some of them have deceptively standard names that don't indicate their connection to aerospace research. A university from Hong Kong is also collaborating with mainland Chinese research institutes on the Mars mission. US, Australia, Canada, and the UK have recently been receiving mysterious, unsolicited seeds from China. The reports have been flowing in since late July. Some U.S. officials warn that the seeds could be harmful to local agriculture. Now, part of the mystery has been solved. The U.S. Department of Agriculture's Animal and Plant Health Inspection Service has identified 14 of the species as herbs and plants like hibiscus, mint, and sage. But the identified seeds make up only part of the samples the department collected. Still, experts urge recipients not to plant them. Robin Prusner, a state seed control officer at the Department of Agriculture in Iowa, also voiced another concern. There appears to be an unknown coating on the seeds, which she says could be insecticide or fungicide. She says people describe to her that the seeds are coated with something purple. She explained that though she hasn't had them in her hands yet, it sounds an awful lot like a seed treatment. Iowa is the top corn-growing state in the U.S. From today on, we have a news section to explain political terms or issues in China, ones that are unfamiliar to the Western world. And this is the first piece. We will take a look at the 7 most powerful men in China's political scene. How is China ruled, and who are its most powerful people? You've heard of Xi Jinping, the leader of the Communist Party, China's state chairman, and the commander-in-chief of the Chinese military. But besides him, there are 6 other policymakers that affect the lives of China's 1.4 billion people. They make up the second layer of the Chinese Communist Party's overlapping power pyramid. The 7 people, including Xi, are the members of the all-powerful Politburo Standing Committee. In the West, they're often called the 7 men who rule China. Each member of the committee is in charge of certain aspects of China's society. For example, Li Keqiang, China's vice premier, is in charge of economics. And Wang Yang, who recently made the U.S. sanctions list, is in charge of the United Front system. That's the department working to infiltrate politicians and organizations abroad to serve the Communist Party's goals. Another man on the sanction list, Han Zhen, is responsible for Hong Kong policies. He was named as a target for sanctions due to Beijing's recent crackdown on Hong Kong's freedom. Members of the Standing Committee are, on the surface, decided by the Communist Party's 205-person Central Committee. But most are actually nominated in advance by previous members of the Standing Committee. The nominations hardly ever face objections. The Standing Committee is often composed of either sons of senior party members, like Xi Jinping, whose father was a communist revolutionary and a former member of the Standing Committee, or those who are deemed capable and therefore chosen as agents representing a certain communist interest group, like Han Zhen, who is an ally of previous party leader Yangtze. One anonymous source told Reuters that former party leader Jiang Zemin is hoping that Han Zhen can stay on to look after the interests of his family and allies. The 7-man group is essentially composed of people chosen to represent different interest groups within the Communist Party. That's why some Chinese people say the party system is more like a collective hereditary monarchy. Instead of having one person inherit the power, the party ensures that the political and economic interests of different party groups are protected by the 7 people. There's also an unspoken rule. No matter how many evil deeds a person commits, as long as he's appointed to the Standing Committee, he won't have to worry about the consequences. That's because as long as he doesn't try to overthrow the party or its leader, a Standing Committee member rarely, if ever, faces criminal charges. And that's all for today's China in Focus. Thanks for watching and see you tomorrow.